What if the family you built your entire life around wasn't bound by blood at all, but by something far more powerful? On a quiet Tuesday evening in Brooklyn, 28-year-old Elena Morrison sat across from the man she'd called Papa for nearly 3 decades. Vincent Castellano, silver-haired and weathered by time, had just finished setting the table with his own hands, something he never did when business associates were present. The china clinked softly. The room smelled of his famous Sunday sauce, simmering since morning. But Elena's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. She'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, lying awake in her childhood bedroom, staring at ceiling cracks she'd memorized as a girl. Tonight she would finally tell him the truth. The words sat heavy on her tongue, ready to shatter the comfortable silence between them, and nothing, she knew, would ever be quite the same again. "Where are you watching from tonight?" Vincent had always been a man of routines. Every Tuesday evening, he closed the restaurant early and cooked for Elena. Just the two of them. No bodyguards hovering by the door, no hushed phone calls about shipments or territories. On Tuesdays, he was simply a father making dinner for his daughter. He'd taught her to roll meatballs when she was 7, standing on a step stool beside him, her small hands covered in breadcrumbs and egg. He'd walked her down the aisle at her wedding 5 years ago, though that marriage had ended quietly, without drama, the way some things simply run their course. Elena watched him now, moving through the kitchen with the same careful attention he brought to everything. He'd aged since her mother passed 4 years ago. The lines around his eyes had deepened. His shoulders, once so broad they'd seemed capable of carrying the whole neighborhood, had begun to curve slightly inward. But his hands were still steady as he ladled sauce over pasta, still gentle as he'd always been with her, despite the rumors that swirled around his name in certain circles. "You've been quiet tonight," Vincent said, not looking up from the stove. "Something bothering you, sweetheart?" Elena forced a smile. "Just tired from work." The lie came easily. She'd been practicing lies for 3 months now, ever since the letter arrived. The letter that had turned her entire world sideways. They sat down to eat, falling into familiar rhythms. Vincent asked about her job at the library. She told him about Mrs. Chen, who came in every day to read the newspaper because her apartment was lonely. He nodded, listening the way he always did, as though her stories about borrowers and overdue books were the most important news in the world. This was their ritual. This was home. But the envelope in Elena's purse felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her mother's sister, Aunt Diane, who Elena had only met twice in her life, had sent it. Inside was a birth certificate, not Elena's official one, the one she'd used for her driver's license and passport. This was different. This one had another name, another date, another mother listed, and no father at all. The letter accompanying it had been brief. "Your mother made me promise never to tell you," Diane had written in shaky cursive. "But she's gone now, and you deserve the truth. You were 3 when Rose brought you to Vincent. She was dying even then, though none of us knew how fast it would happen. She begged him to raise you as his own. And God help me, he did. But you're not his daughter by blood, Elena. Your real father was a man named Thomas Morrison, and he died before you were born. Rose married Vincent after. He chose you. Remember that. He chose you." Elena had read those words so many times the paper had grown soft at the creases. Chosen. Not born to him. Chosen. It should have felt like a gift, she thought. It should have made his love seem even bigger, more deliberate, but instead, it felt like her entire foundation had crumbled. Every memory now came with a question mark. Every "I love you" felt like it needed an asterisk. Did he ever look at her and see someone else's child? Did he ever regret the promise he'd made to a dying woman? "Elena?" Vincent's voice pulled her back to the present. He was studying her now. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. "You're not eating. And you've got that look you used to get as a kid, when you broke something and didn't want to tell me." Her throat tightened. She set down her own fork. The moment had arrived, ready or not. She couldn't keep carrying this secret. It was eating her alive from the inside out. "Papa," she said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I found out. About Mom, about me." Vincent set down his fork too. His expression shifted, the warmth in his eyes giving way to something more guarded. He'd spent a lifetime reading people, reading danger. What kind of something? Elena reached into her purse with shaking hands. She pulled out the envelope and placed it on the table between them, next to the basket of bread. Aunt Diane sent me this 3 months ago. Vincent stared at the envelope but didn't reach for it. His jaw tightened. For a long moment, the only sound was the tick of the kitchen clock, the same clock that had marked time through her entire childhood. "What's in it?" he asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. Elena's eyes filled with tears. The words came out in a rush, like water breaking through a dam. "I'm not your real daughter. My father was someone else. Mom brought me to you when I was little. You're not—" Her voice broke. "I'm not actually yours." Vincent's face went very still. The silence that followed felt endless. Vincent sat perfectly motionless, staring at the envelope like it might burst into flames. Elena watched him, her heart hammering against her ribs, waiting for something. Anger, denial, relief, anything. But his face had become unreadable. The same mask she'd seen him wear when dangerous men came to the restaurant asking for favors. Finally, he stood. For a terrible moment, Elena thought he might leave, might walk out of the kitchen and out of her life. Instead, he moved to the counter and poured himself a glass of water. His hand trembled slightly as he drank. "How long have you known?" His voice was rough, scraped raw. 3 months, Elena whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know what it meant." Vincent turned to face her. His eyes were wet. In all her years, through her mother's funeral, through every hard moment they'd weathered together, Elena had never seen him cry, but he was close now, fighting to keep his composure. "Did you read the whole letter?" he asked. Elena nodded. "Aunt Diane explained everything. About Thomas Morrison, about Mom being sick, about you." She couldn't finish the sentence. The words felt too heavy. Vincent returned to the table but didn't sit. He stood behind his chair, gripping the back of it like he needed something solid to hold on to. "Your mother," he began, then stopped. "Started again. Rose was the love of my life. I met her at a church fundraiser. She had you on her hip, this tiny little thing with your mother's dark eyes. You were barely 3 years old." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "She told me the truth on our 3rd date. Told me about Thomas, about the accident that killed him, about being pregnant and alone and terrified. She told me she had a daughter, and that any man who wanted her would have to want you too." Vincent's voice cracked slightly. "I fell in love with both of you that night." Elena felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "But why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because Rose asked me not to." Vincent finally sat, heavily, like the weight of the secret had been holding him upright all these years. "She was afraid you'd feel different. Afraid you'd feel like you didn't belong. She wanted you to grow up normal, wanted you to feel secure. And Elena," he reached across the table, his rough hand covering hers, "you were my daughter from the moment I decided to be your father. Blood didn't matter to me. It never did. But it matters to me," Elena said, and she hated how small her voice sounded. "All my life I thought I knew who I was. I thought I understood my place in the world. Now I don't know what's real. When you look at me, do you see me? Or do you see some promise you made to a dying woman?" The words came out harsher than she'd intended. She watched Vincent flinch as though she'd struck him. "Is that really what you think?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "After 28 years, you think I stayed out of obligation?" "I don't know what to think anymore." Elena pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. The chair scraped against the tile floor. "Every memory I have is different now. That time you taught me to ride a bike. Were you thinking about Thomas Morrison? When you scared off Tommy Rizzo after prom because he got too handsy? Was that a real father protecting his daughter, or just you keeping a promise?" "Elena, and what about Mom? Did she ever even love me? Or was I just a reminder of what she lost?" The question hung in the air, ugly and raw. Elena immediately regretted it, but the words were out and she couldn't take them back. Vincent stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge she'd rarely heard. "Don't you ever question your mother's love. She gave up everything for you. When Thomas died, both their families turned their backs on her, said she had no business raising a child alone, that she should give you up. She worked 3 jobs to keep you. She went without food so you could eat. And when she got sick, his voice broke. When she found out about the cancer, her only thought was you. She didn't care about dying. She cared about leaving you alone. Elena sank back into her chair, shame washing over her. I didn't marry your mother to get you. Vincent continued, softer now. I married her because I couldn't imagine a life without either of you in it. And after she passed, do you know what kept me going? You did, coming home to you. Tuesday dinners. Watching you become this strong, kind woman who works at a library because you believe stories matter. He wiped his eyes roughly. You are my daughter in every way that counts. And if you can't see that, if blood is all that matters to you, then maybe I failed somewhere along the way. The kitchen fell silent again. The sauce had stopped simmering. The pasta was getting cold, and Elena felt like her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces, each one sharp and painful. I'm sorry, she whispered. Papa, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean— Vincent shook his head. You needed to say it. You needed to ask. I understand. But the hurt in his eyes told a different story. If this moment has touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up. Elena stood, moving around the table toward him, but Vincent held up a hand. I think, he said carefully, maybe we both need some time to think, to breathe. She wanted to protest, wanted to throw her arms around him and take back every hurtful word, but he was already turning away, clearing plates with methodical precision, his shoulders rigid with unspoken pain. Elena gathered her purse, the envelope still lying on the table between them like a chasm. As she reached the door, she turned back one more time. Vincent stood at the sink, his back to her, hands braced against the counter. He looked suddenly old and unbearably alone. Papa? She tried again. Good night, Elena, he said, without turning around. She left, and the door closed behind her with a soft, final click. 3 weeks passed without their Tuesday dinners. 3 weeks that felt like 3 years. Elena called twice, but Vincent's responses were polite and brief. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just busy with the restaurant. The warmth had drained from his voice, leaving behind something courteous and distant. It was worse than anger. It was absence. Elena threw herself into work, but the library felt different now. Every parent who came in with their child felt like a knife to her heart. She'd watch them together. A father helping his son reach a high shelf, a mother braiding her daughter's hair at the reading table, and wonder if those connections were real or just performances, obligations dressed up as love. Mrs. Chen noticed her distraction. The elderly woman set down her newspaper one afternoon and peered at Elena over her reading glasses. You've got trouble written all over your face, dear, she said. Want to talk about it? Elena surprised herself by saying yes. They sat in the quiet corner, and Elena told her everything. About the letter, the dinner, the fight, about how she'd taken her fear and confusion and weaponized it against the one person who'd never given her reason to doubt his love. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting. When Elena finished, the older woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, My daughter is adopted. Did you know that? Elena shook her head. She found out when she was 30. Found her birth certificate by accident when we were moving. She was furious with me for not telling her sooner. Mrs. Chen's eyes grew distant with memory. She said almost exactly what you said to your father. Asked me if I'd ever really loved her or if she was just a project, a good deed. What did you do? I let her be angry. I let her rage and question and doubt. And then, when she was ready, I told her the truth. That the moment they placed her in my arms at the hospital, my heart recognized her. That biology has nothing to do with destiny. That some souls are meant to be together, and it doesn't matter how they find each other. Mrs. Chen reached across and patted Elena's hand. Your father has been loving you for 28 years. That's not a promise kept. That's a life lived. There's a difference. Elena felt the tears come again. I hurt him so badly. Then you fix it, Mrs. Chen said simply. You go to him and you fix it. Before time fixes it in a way you can't undo. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Vincent standing alone in that kitchen, about the slump of his shoulders, the defeat in his voice. She'd seen him face down dangerous men without flinching, but her words had broken something in him. And for what? Because she was scared. Because finding out the truth had made her feel unsteady. She thought about all the times he'd been there. When she fell off her bike at 7 and broke her wrist, he'd carried her 6 blocks to the hospital, running the whole way, refusing to wait for an ambulance. When her high school boyfriend broke up with her before prom, Vincent had driven her to the dance anyway, walked her inside, and told her she was worth 10 of that boy. When her mother died, he'd held Elena through the night as she sobbed, never once breaking down himself because he knew she needed him to be strong. That wasn't obligation. That was love. Pure, uncomplicated, chosen love. The next morning, Elena went to the Brooklyn Public Library's archives. She spent hours searching through old records until she found what she was looking for: the marriage certificate for Rose Morrison and Vincent Castellano. The date was 8 months after Thomas Morrison's death. On the certificate, in the section for children, Vincent had listed Elena as his daughter. Not stepdaughter, daughter. He'd claimed her legally, officially, completely. He'd chosen her name, kept the Morrison, because he understood that heritage mattered even as he built something new. Elena also found something else: Thomas Morrison's obituary. There was a photo. He was young, dark-haired, with kind eyes. But looking at him, Elena felt nothing. No connection, no recognition. He was a stranger who'd given her life, but not her memories, not her foundation. Vincent had given her everything else. Elena closed the archive books and made a decision. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. "Papa, can I come to dinner this Tuesday? Please, I need to see you." The response took 20 agonizing minutes. When it came, it was short. "Okay, 6 o'clock. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments." Elena sat in the library archive room, clutching her phone, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she felt a tiny spark of hope. She had hurt him terribly, but maybe, just maybe, there was still time to make it right. Some wounds could heal. Some bridges could be rebuilt. She just hoped she hadn't waited too long. Tuesday arrived with painful slowness. Elena spent the entire day at work distracted, watching the clock, rehearsing what she wanted to say. She stopped at a florist on the way and bought a bouquet of yellow roses, her mother's favorite. Then she picked up a bottle of red wine, the expensive kind Vincent only opened on special occasions. When she arrived at the restaurant at 6, the closed sign was up, but the door was unlocked. She stepped inside to the familiar smell of garlic and tomatoes, and her throat immediately tightened with emotion. The dining room was empty except for one table, set for 2 with the good china. The same setup as always. Vincent emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He looked tired. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper than she remembered. They stood facing each other across the empty restaurant, the silence stretching between them. "Hi, Papa," Elena said softly. "Hi, sweetheart." Neither of them moved. Finally, Elena crossed the space between them and held out the flowers. "I brought these for Mom. I thought maybe we could put them on the table, so she could be here too." Vincent's expression cracked slightly. He took the flowers, and his hands trembled as he found a vase. They sat down to dinner, and the first few minutes were awkward, filled with too careful conversation about work and weather. But gradually the rhythm returned. The familiar dance of passing bread, refilling glasses, the small comfortable silences that come with years of shared meals. After they'd both made it halfway through their pasta, Elena set down her fork. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "I spent the last 3 weeks thinking about what I said to you, and Papa, I need you to know I was wrong, about everything." Vincent started to speak, but she held up a hand. "Please let me finish. I need to say this." He nodded, his expression guarded but listening. "I went to the library archives," Elena continued. "I found your marriage certificate. I saw that you listed me as your daughter, not your stepdaughter. You gave me your name, your home, your life, and I repaid that by questioning whether any of it was real." Her voice wavered. "I was scared, Papa. Finding out the truth made me feel like I was standing on shifting ground. Everything I thought I knew about myself changed in an instant, and instead of trusting in what we'd built together, I lashed out. I hurt you because I was hurt, and that was cruel and unfair." Vincent's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but he remained silent, letting her continue. "I also found a picture of Thomas Morrison," Elena said. "And you know what I felt when I saw it?" "Nothing. He was a stranger. A good man, I'm sure, who would have loved me if he'd lived. But he didn't raise me. He didn't teach me how to tie my shoes or help me with my homework. He didn't scare away bad boyfriends or walk me down the aisle. He didn't sit with me in hospitals or hold me when I cried." She wiped her eyes. "You did all of that. You're my father, not because of biology, but because you chose to be. Every single day for 28 years, you chose me. And I should have seen that. I should have trusted that." A single tear rolled down Vincent's cheek. He wiped it away roughly, then reached across the table and took both her hands in his. His grip was strong and warm, calloused from years of work. "Elena, I need you to understand something. When I married your mother, I didn't just take on a responsibility. I gained a daughter. You were never a burden or an obligation. You were a gift, the greatest gift of my life." "I know that now," Elena whispered. "I'm so sorry it took me so long to see it." Vincent squeezed her hands. "I should have told you the truth years ago. Your mother and we thought we were protecting you. But maybe we were wrong. Maybe you deserved to know from the beginning. I'm sorry for that, for making you find out the hard way. You were respecting Mom's wishes. There's nothing wrong with that. But it hurt you, and that kills me." Vincent stood, still holding her hand, and pulled her into a tight embrace. Elena buried her face in his shoulder and cried, really cried, for the first time since the letter arrived. He held her the way he'd held her 1,000 times before, one hand on her back, the other cradling her head, murmuring soft reassurances in Italian the way he always did when she was upset. "Ti voglio bene, mia figlia," he whispered. "I love you, my daughter. I love you too, Papa. So much." They stood like that for a long time, in the quiet restaurant, with the smell of Sunday sauce in the air and yellow roses on the table, and slowly, the broken pieces began to fit back together. Not perfectly. There would always be a scar where the hurt had been, but strong enough. Real enough. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. When they finally pulled apart, both wiping their eyes and laughing at themselves, Vincent gestured back to the table. "Come on, the food's getting cold. And I made cannoli for dessert." Elena smiled through her tears. "Your cannoli? Is there any other kind?" He winked, and just like that, they were okay. Not healed completely, that would take time. But okay. Together. Family. Over the next several weeks, something beautiful happened. Elena and Vincent didn't just repair their relationship, they deepened it. They began talking about things they'd never discussed before. Vincent told her stories about her mother from before Elena was born, about Rose's strength and determination, about how hard she'd fought to build a life for her daughter. He shared memories of those early years, of 3-year-old Elena calling him Vincent, because she couldn't quite pronounce Vincent, of the first time she'd called him Papa, and how his heart had nearly burst. Elena, in turn, opened up about her fears and insecurities, about the questions she'd been too afraid to ask, and Vincent listened with patience and love, never dismissing her feelings, always reassuring her that confusion didn't diminish their bond. They talked about Thomas Morrison, too, and Vincent helped Elena understand that honoring her biological father's memory didn't betray the relationship they'd built. "You can hold more than one truth in your heart," he told her one evening. "Thomas gave you life. I gave you a childhood. There's room for both." One Tuesday, 6 weeks after their reconciliation, Vincent handed Elena a box. Inside was a photo album she'd never seen before. It was filled with pictures of her mother pregnant, of Thomas Morrison holding baby ultrasound images with a proud smile, of Rose and Thomas together, young and in love. Tucked in the back was a letter, yellowed with age, written in her mother's handwriting. "She wanted you to have this when you were ready," Vincent explained quietly. "I've been keeping it safe. I think now is the right time." Elena read the letter through tears. Her mother had written it during her final hospital stay, knowing she wouldn't survive. In it, Rose explained everything. The love she'd shared with Thomas, the grief of losing him, the terror of facing parenthood alone, and the miracle of finding Vincent. "You were loved by 2 fathers," Rose had written. one who gave you to me and one who chose to keep you. You are doubly blessed, my darling girl. Never forget that love isn't about blood. It's about showing up, day after day, choosing someone over and over. That's what Vincent did for us. That's what family means." Elena folded the letter carefully and looked at Vincent through swimming eyes. "Thank you for keeping this. Thank you for everything." "You don't have to thank me for loving you, Elena. That's not how this works." She smiled, understanding completely for the first time. Love wasn't transactional. It wasn't about debts or obligations. It was simply about being present, being real, being there. As spring turned to summer, their Tuesday dinners continued, each one feeling more precious than the last. Elena brought stories from the library. Vincent shared memories and recipes. They laughed more easily now, the tension that had briefly divided them replaced by a deeper trust. Elena even began bringing ingredients and helping cook, working side by side with Vincent in the kitchen the way they had when she was small. One evening, as they were cleaning up together, Elena said, "I've been thinking about Thomas Morrison, not as my father, but as a person. I'd like to visit his grave if you know where it is. I want to thank him." Vincent dried his hands on a towel and nodded. "I know where it is. I've been there a few times over the years, actually, to pay my respects. I'll take you this weekend if you'd like." They went together on a sunny Saturday morning. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful. Thomas Morrison's headstone was simple, with dates that showed he'd only been 26 when he died. Elena knelt and placed flowers at the base. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for loving my mom. Thank you for giving me life. I wish I could have known you, but I want you to know that Mom was happy. We both were. Vincent took good care of us. I hope that gives you peace." Vincent stood a respectful distance away, giving her privacy. But when Elena stood and reached for his hand, he was there, steady as always. On the drive home, Elena said, "You know what I realized? I'm not losing anything by knowing the truth. I'm gaining it. I have a fuller picture now, a complete story. That's a good way to look at it. And Papa, thank you for never making me choose, for understanding that I can love the memory of Thomas and still love you just as much, that there's room in my heart for all of it." Vincent's voice was thick with emotion. "You've always had room in your heart for everyone, Elena. That's who you are. That's who your mother raised you to be, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of." They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Elena said, "Tuesday dinner's forever, right?" "No matter what. Forever," Vincent agreed. "It's a promise." And this time, Elena understood that a promise from Vincent Castellano wasn't a burden. It was a gift, a covenant, a testament to the kind of love that doesn't waver, doesn't doubt, doesn't end. The kind of love that builds families not from blood, but from choice, from showing up, from being present through the ordinary moments and the difficult ones, through discoveries and doubts and reconciliations. If you've enjoyed this story, please remember to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Your support means the world to us. As they pulled up to the restaurant, Elena looked at the man beside her, silver-haired, weathered, strong, and infinitely kind, and thought, "This is my father." Not because genetics say so, but because love says so. Because 28 years of Tuesday dinners say so. Because every choice, every moment, every ordinary day has said so. And that, Elena understood now, was more than enough. It was everything. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, hold your loved ones close and remember, family is built one choice, one moment, one dinner at a time.